How do you install RAM in your desktop computer? Which RAM slots do you use? What RAM do you buy for your particular computer or motherboard? We'll address those questions in this video. First of all, I have two motherboards in front of me. I have this Gigabyte motherboard. It's an ATX motherboard, and I have this Asus Micro ATX motherboard. They both have 4 RAM slots. So which slot do you use? Interesting. Also, which RAM do you use? This is DDR3 RAM. Now, I've done some pre-work. I know DDR3 RAM is the correct RAM for this particular motherboard. But how do you decide that? Well, let's take a look. Let me do a little bit more of a close-up and look at the details of these particular motherboards. Okay, now we got a little better close-up. You can see that this is a Gigabyte GA-Z97X UD3H motherboard. So we're going to use that number to look up what RAM is required for this particular motherboard. Here is the other motherboard, and you can see that this is an Asus H97M Plus motherboard. So what RAM does that use? Well, we're going to look that up too. So let's go to the computer and look up both these motherboards. Here we are in Windows, and I've listed the name of the two motherboards that we're going to look up. So let's start with this Gigabyte, and I'm just going to copy and paste this since I already typed it in. It's quite a mouthful of a name. Let's go to Microsoft Edge, and I'm going to use DuckDuckGo. Microsoft Edge is slow sometimes. All right, so let's type in that, and let's see here. We're looking for a support site. Global is fine, and this looks fine. That's the exact motherboard, so let's do that one. And let's see if we can figure out what type of memory that we would need. If we had bought this motherboard online and had a processor to go with it, just click the specification here on the Gigabyte website, and let's look at memory. So 4 times DDR3 DIMM sockets supporting up to 32 gigabytes of system memory. So that's what we would need to do this. And if you look at the memory timings, it supports naturally the 1333 and 1600. So at this point we would buy the 1600 because it wouldn't be very expensive for the 1600. Since DDR3 is older memory, we could get that pretty cheap. Now, you can go to these higher timings if you want to try to overclock. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to overclock. So you can buy the higher timing memories if you want. In general, you can buy a higher timing memory. Say you bought DDR3 2400 because you found it on sale somewhere. Well, you could downclock it to 1600 and it should work just fine. In fact, you could just install it and it'd probably just work at 1600. But if you wanted, you could try to overclock it. And you can enable XMP, which should overclock it automatically, but not always. So anyway, that's the memory that we need. Now, where do we install it? Well, that's a different thing. We need to find the manual for this. So let's see, service and support. Let's go back here and see if they got support for this motherboard. There's a support site for the motherboard. Let's see if they have a manual. They do. Let's click the manual, and we need the Adobe Reader. We want the English one because I'm doing this in English. Let's download that and see what that looks like. And let's figure out the memory that we need. So this is taking forever. I have a very fast internet connection, so this is dead slow. So while we're doing that, let's look up the other computer that we have. And we got the Asus H97M Plus. So let's copy that and let's go to DuckDuckGo because I'm not a big fan of Bing. And let's paste that and let's find that motherboard. So Asus H97M Plus. Here we go on the Asus website. All right, so before we get into that, let's go back to our Gigabyte. It should be downloaded by now. Where is the memory? Let's take a look. Installing memory is on page 17, so we need to go to page 17. Oh look, it's almost done downloading. Let's just wait and let's see if we can wait till this downloads so then we can just fly through this. Yep, there we go. Okay, let's go down to page 17, and there's 12, 15, 16, 17. Actually, it's on page 12 or 16 is what we need. It tells you which slots to use. Let me get this bigger so you can see it a whole lot better. So you can see dual channel memory configuration. 2 modules, we want to put it in DDR3.2 and DDR3.1. So it's this slot and this slot. So it would be this one and this one. The 2 kind of pairs that are the pair away from each other but farther from the motherboard. And when we go on to the motherboard, you'll notice that these are actually colored different color from the other 2 because that's the way that you want to do it. We want one stick in channel A and 1 stick in channel B. That's why we're doing the slot 1 and 2. And the way they name them, this is slot 1 and this is slot 2. So that's the way that we're going to install the memory. Notice that they don't even bother figuring out if you got 1 stick. If you got 1 stick, you can put it anywhere. It'll work just fine. Don't get 1 stick. Dual channel memory will actually increase your speed if you populate both with the same thing. You also want to populate both of the slots with the same type of memory. The exact same if you can get it. And they do sell kits. They say dual channel kit. Well, it's just 2 memory sticks, but the 2 memory sticks have the exact same timings and the exact same frequency so that they work together as a dual channel unit. If you put in 2 just random DIMMs, you might get it to work in dual channel, but it might not work so well. It might clock down to the memory stick that's the lower performance one. It might not work at all depending on how badly off the timings are. And yeah, you can adjust the timings in the BIOS sometimes, but gee, that's really a lot of hassle for most people. So I would say if you're going to do dual channel, buy the 2 memory sticks at the same time. Make sure they're the exact same 2 memory sticks or DIMMs that you buy. And when you do that, it's best to just buy it in a kit where you get 2 the same in the kit, and then you know for sure that they're exactly the same. All right, so let's look at the Asus motherboard and do the same things. Go to the specs. Okay, so we've got 4 DIMMs again, DDR3 1600 or 1333 again, non-ECC on-buffered memory. We knew that. We were talking about that. Or we would, no, you wouldn't know that if you didn't watch the other video. Well, anyways, on-buffered, most of the memory you're going to buy is non-ECC on-buffered memory, and that's what you generally buy. This one isn't quite as detailed. So anyway, you can go to the QVLS qualified vendors list, and it lists the memory that's actually done there. But anyway, let's go to their support site here and see if we can get the manual and figure out where to install the memory. Here we go, manual and documentation. Now, if you got the manual with your computer, you could just look it up on paper, but I like the electronic version better. So this one looks like the right one. Ooh, that's the insert. We don't want the insert. We want the actual user's manual. User's manual. Actually, the insert might tell us. Let's try that. Let's go, and we'll come back if the insert doesn't tell us. Oh yeah, that's not very exciting, is it? Okay, yeah. Let's go back and let's look at the actual manual. So let's download the user's manual and see if this one downloads faster than the other one. It does seem to do it. So system memory is in 1-6. So let's keep going. Come on. Oh, they got memory specifications here. That's the same specs we saw on the other page. Let's look at the memory on 1-6. There's 1-2, 3, 4, 5, 1-5, 1-6 memory configuration. Now, it was actually on the other page where we had that, so let's zoom in a little bit here so we can actually read this thing. So it says you may install varying memory sizes AB for compatibility. Use a maximum of 3 GB system memory for 32-bit OS. You should be doing a 64-bit OS. So yeah, that doesn't tell us a whole lot. Let's go back to 1.6 like they actually said. So 1.6, and let's blow that up. System memory. Oh, here we go. So they tell us, let's get this a little bigger because they put this in teeny tiny type. All right, so here's how they want us to do it. Channel A, DIMM A1 and A2 and channel B, B1 and B2. So remember, we want dual channel. We want one from channel A, one from channel B. So we want to put it in A1 and B1. So if you look, A1 and B1 are the two slots here. Oh, actually it's closest to the CPU. I filmed this out of order. I actually put it in these two slots. So I populated A2 and B2, and that's because that's normally the way you do it. But the A1 and B1 are actually the first two slots. It wouldn't really matter, but anyway, you just want to make sure you get one from channel A and one from channel B, and then you can get it. And notice you skip a one in here. So that's interesting. Usually it's the two farthest from there, but on this Asus board, the channel A1 and channel B1 would be the closest two memory slots. So filming this out of order, I guess it didn't work this time. All right, now let's close these up. Close that one too, and go back to DuckDuckGo. Now let's see if you had bought a computer either used or you bought it, say for example, from Best Buy. Let me get a couple up from Best Buy and show you that. All right, I have a Dell computer here on a Best Buy website, and this is a computer that ordinary people might buy off the rack. It only has 8 gigabytes of memory. Suppose you wanted to upgrade that to 16 gigabytes. What would we look up to do that? Best Buy's, these ads are just really vague on the name. It just says Dell Vostro. Well, a Dell Vostro, there's innumerable variations of the Dell Vostro. So you got to make sure you know which Dell Vostro it is. And you know, if you bought this used, hopefully they gave you the user's manual. You can tell actually in the model number here, it says 3470. That's the actual Dell Vostro model number, but how would you know that that's different from the rest of the thing? If you have the user's manual, and hopefully you do, Best Buy supplied the user's manual here. Dell Vostro technical specifications, it should give in here somewhere the memory configuration, and it says it's a user upgradable thing, so you should be able to do it. Okay, here's memory configuration. So let's get this a little bit bigger and take a look. So memory configuration is 4 gigabyte, maximum memory is 32 gigabyte, max supported per slot is 16 gigabyte. That means it has 2 slots, and it does say number of slots is 2. UDIMM is on-buffered DIMM. Watch my video on memory terminology, or all about memory I called it, and you'll figure that out. But 8 gigabyte, we can go 8 gigabyte by 1 or 4 gigabyte by 2 to get 8 gigabyte. 12 gigabyte you can do, or 16 gigabyte. And honestly, if you're going to upgrade, you want to do 16 gigabyte. This 12 gigabyte is really goofy. It wouldn't work properly always in dual channel. Probably work in dual channel for the first 4 gigabyte. So I would not do 12 gigabyte, although the manufacturers of these computers tend to do that. I would do the 16 gigabyte, especially in today's day and age. Now you could go 16 gigabyte by 1 or 8 by 2. Remember, you want dual channel, you would do 8 gigabyte by 2, and since it only has 2 memory slots, you put it in both memory slots. So you can do a DDR4 2400 or 2666. I would definitely get the 2666 for better performance, and they aren't that expensive. Nowadays, they're not much more expensive than the 2400 in today's market, so I would just get the 2666 8 gigabyte by 2 kit, and you should be good to go. And that would be a DDR4 memory, and it doesn't say, oh, it does say DDR4 right on there. So DDR4 2666, that's what you would buy to upgrade this particular Dell. And hopefully you had the Hopefully you had the manual, because the manual really helps. You can do a search if you know the name. It's 3470, something like that. Okay, drivers and downloads, overview, documentation. And if we look at the documentation, let's see, manuals. Let's see, manuals and documents, there you go. Setup and specification guide, that should tell you exactly what to do with the memory. It should give the same information. Yeah, this is the same manual that we just looked at. So there you go. Yeah, there's the same exact thing. So there you go. That's how you could look it up. Now, what about an HP? This is a refurbished HP, and they do actually say 6200, but it doesn't say the name of the computer, which is usually necessary to do this. So if you had bought this used, that would be very difficult. It's got 4 gigabytes of memory. Now, if it's running a 32-bit operating system, you can only use 4 gigabytes of memory anyways. So is this running a 64-bit operating system? Well, let's take a look here. Boy, these sites make it hard to navigate these sites and get these technical detail information. They want you to bring it in and pay them for it. So let's see here. Specifications, here we go. Okay, so storage type, hard drive, Windows 10 Home, is it running on 32-bit or 64-bit? General, small form, 6200 SSFF. Okay, this is probably garbage. We could do a search. Operating system architecture, 64-bit. So we know it's on 64-bit memory. It has 4 gigabytes of RAM, but they don't give any more details on the memory, maybe? Oh yeah, DDR3 SD RAM. That's synchronous dynamic random access memory, and that would be a UDIM like the other one. Look at my video on all about RAM and you can get that. So it's got 4 gigabytes, but how many slots does it have? Does it have 1 slot or 2 or 4? Usually they have 2, but we don't know from this. So what would we do? So we could try just doing a search for HP 6400. Let's try that right now. 6200, is that 6200 or 64? 6200. HP 6200. Small form factor, that was the SFF, so this is probably it, and that's a support for HP site. So let's take a look at that. Does that look like our computer? Okay, close that out. Yeah, that looks like the computer, doesn't it? So let's see if we got support. Diagnostic, contact, products. Okay, maybe we got to click again. Choose a different OS. No. Try manually selecting. I don't see my operating system. Identify, download, install. Software and drivers. We don't want software and drivers. We want a manual or specifications. This site's not doing too well. So let's try this again. Let's go back and see if we can type in specs and see if we can get the specs for that. Here we go. Micro towers, small form factor. I think this is the one. Now watch, it'll go to the same site that we had before. No, this is much better. This is the one that we want. That looks like our computer, so that looks good. And product features, physical specifications. Okay, that doesn't do much for us. Operating system. Okay, see, they could do a 32-bit Windows 7, but it's a refurbished one, so it had Windows 10 on it. Manageability features, temperature, humidity, who cares, security. Okay, that did not tell me anything about the RAM, did it? Let's see. Okay, that's just the size. Oh, here we go. Electrical, storage, ports, RAM maximum. Okay, but memory slots, 4 DIMM. So it's got 4 DIMM slots, 16 gigabyte, 1333 DDR3. So we would need 1333 or higher DDR3. Remember, you can always downclock the 1333. So there you go. Could do the 1333 RAM on that one. So boy, the pre-built desktops, they're very difficult sometimes to figure out which memory to use. You have to really know a lot about the pre-built desktops in order to get the information. All right, just a couple more things here. Let's see if we got a 64-bit operating system or not. All you have to do in Windows 10, just type about. So if you didn't have the specs there, you could just type about on your operating system, and you can see right here it says system type 64-bit operating system. And so there we have it. If you did that on a 32-bit, it would say 32-bit there. You know exactly what you have. Remember, a 32-bit operating system, you'd max out at 4 gigabytes. If you put anything more in than that, it wouldn't use all of it. It would just use up to 4 gigabytes, or 3. I think 1 gigabyte for the operating system and 3 for the system. But anyway, it would do that. There is one more thing that you can do. Sometimes this works well. If you go to the Crucial.com, Crucial is a manufacturer. It's actually owned by Micron, and it manufactures memory. But you can actually do a search for your computer. So let's try that one that we had in there, the Dell. Let's select the Dell. So Dell, and it was a Vostro and 3470, I believe it was. So let's check that and see what they say on this particular website. There it is. So it's waiting for a response. And we got it. So they actually give us maximum memory slots, 2 banks. 2 banks of 1, max is 32. And 8 gigabyte, standard memory is 8 gigabyte, removable. And that actually tells us the chipset. It's an Intel H370 chipset. That's kind of nice. But it shows you kits that you can buy for this and the cost. And so you could buy memory just straight through here and you'd get it good. Remember, we wanted the 2666. It doesn't list the 2666 here. But anyway, that's another option that you can do to do the memory. All right, let's go to the computers and see how to install the RAM in the slots. We're now ready to install the RAM into these slots, and we already found out from doing our research that this slot and this slot are the ones that we're going to use. DDR4 or 2 and DDR1, they're called, on the product for the Gigabyte motherboard here. Now this one has the little notches on both sides, so I'm going to push these out on the gray ones and push these little tabs out on the gray ones here. And we'll install our DDR3 memory. This one does take DDR3. Now if you notice, this would not work this way. If you take a look, this little notch here does not match with the pin in the thing down here. We got to match those up. So all we have to do is flip this around the other way, and now they line up. So we're going to put this one in first. Why? Who cares? It films better when I do the back one first. So that one, and you can see that notch is lining up with the thing, and you just take your thumbs and you push down firmly on each side. Come on, go in, go in. There we go. Okay, so that's seated. Notice that the little tabs automatically popped up on their own. Let's get the second one in. Same idea. You just put it straight in. You just line it up carefully. Line up carefully. Come on, line up. This is hard to do on camera here. Okay, that one goes in, that one goes in. Okay, so they're in, and you just can kind of rock it in from one side and the other. Do one side first. Oops, I don't have it lined. Yeah, silly me. I don't have the notch lined up. Okay, so anyway, just kidding. Let's put this in the correct way, and you can see you can just rock it. You do one side, then push down firmly, and the other side should lock in, and you got it. Now to remove the RAM, it's just the reverse procedure. You just pop out each side, and then you should be able to remove the RAM. Pop out each side, and then remove the RAM. If you were going to store this motherboard, you could leave it with these things open. I usually leave it with the things closed, but it doesn't really matter. Let's go to the other circuit board and see how that one's done, because it's a little bit different. All right, you can see we have the Asus motherboard here. And you notice something different on this one. Let's see if we can get that lined up a little better. This one does not have pins on this side. It only, or the little latches on this side, only has latches on this side. So how's that different? Now we checked, again, we're going to use the 2 gray colored slots. And they label it differently on this one. I can't remember how they label it, but anyway, we went over that already. So we're going to use this one, and with only a notch on one side. So you still do the exact same thing. You line it up so that the pin matches with the little slot in the memory card. And let's put this one in first. So you put this in. And generally on these ones, you push down on the side here that doesn't have the little latch first, and then you push down on the other side, and you got it seated. Do the same thing with the other one. Put it in like this. Push down on the side without the latch first, and then push down on the side with the latch. That's generally how it's done. Now to remove it, just a reverse procedure. So we push up on that, and then wiggle it out. Generally wiggle out this side first, then this side. So that comes right out. Same thing with this. Unlatch here. That removes it. Get this side out, and then pull it out that way. And we got both sides out, and we got that removed. So that's pretty typical of DIMMs. Let's see one other motherboard that's a little bit unusual, and it's in a small form factor computer that I have here. So let's take a look at that. This is a very small computer, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the circuit board. I already moved the screws, so I'm going to remove the circuit board or motherboard from this thing. You can see it's a tiny little thing, and I'm going to pull out. I have to remove this connector for the front panel and get that out of the way. And you can see we got 2 DIMM slots. Now you can see I got a cable in the way, and this is typical. If you get a pre-built computer or one that's already been built, you may have things in the way that make it difficult to insert the memory. It's okay to disconnect those. Just keep track of what you disconnected. And in today's day and age, honestly, if you don't know what you're doing, take a bunch of pictures with your phone and make sure you get it all back exactly the same way. So we're going to remove this little, get it back so you can see it. So we're going to remove this fan connector. Come on, get off there. There, that was a little stubborn. Now I'm just going to put the fan connector, tie it up back here. So let me get my DDR4 DIMM. Let's get that back to where you can see that well. Get my DDR4 DIMM or SODIMM. Sorry, SODIMM. This is the SODIMM. And again, you can see if we did it this way, we would not line up the little notch with the one in here. So let me take a look there. So there is the notch there, and there is, there it is. There's the pin. Right there is the pin, and they would not line up. So we have to flip the module around, and then they're going to line up. So this is very similar on this particular computer to the desktop DIMMs. It is a desktop computer, even though it's small form factor. So we just push it in the same way as we did. We just latch it down like that, and it latches in properly. You may have, if you have SODIMMs in your computer, you got a small form factor computer, especially like the Intel NUCs and the like, they tend to use the laptop type connectors. And if you want to see that, look at my video on replacing the laptop RAM, and you can see how to connect that with the laptop one. But anyway, that's all good. We're all in there, and we're ready to go on this video. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning how to figure out what RAM goes for your computer. Remember that if you have a motherboard, you can look up the name of the motherboard. If you have a desktop computer that's pre-built, you're going to have to look it up from the manufacturer. And we did an example of those as well. Unfortunately, I don't have one here. But you need to do your research and figure out which RAM you need to use and how much RAM you can do before you try to install it. Also, on a desktop that's pre-built, you may have to remove a few parts before you actually install the RAM. Now, when you do that, make sure you get everything back in exactly the same spot that it was in. If you got to unplug cables or something like that, it really does pay. In today's day and age, it's really easy. Just take a picture. You can just take a picture using your phone of the various things before you disconnect them to make sure that you get everything connected back correctly. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe. If you need more information about RAM, there's a couple links in the video to other videos that I have about RAM. Thanks for watching, and maybe we'll see you next time for another home tech adventure.